said.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be fine.
But then you're not required to witness it anymore. Because you're not saying there's exactly one thing which is F and anything that is F.
Oh no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Can you just repeat what you're offering? So here's the
Just
sentence.
the particular comma. If you say anything that is F is also G, isn't
Oh.
that the same as the F is G?
No. If I say
Or every F is G.
Every F is G or an F is G.
Okay.
yeah, that's what you're saying. Every F is G. But of course, it could be true that every F is G if there are no F's.
But if every F is G, then it's also true that the F is G.
Oh, they will follow. Yeah, they will follow that if there is a unique
Right.
F.
So where does the witnessing enter in at that point? Because you said you have to be able to identify.
Oh, if you have a purely general statement, right? Every F is G. That's consistent with there being nothing, right? So no witnessing.
Right.
What I said was, if you take a statement like there is an X that is F, then there has to be witnessing. So in logician's terms, if it's an existential, then there has to be witnessing. Right? But this is an existential.
But at the same time, if you use a universal quantifier and say every F is G, you can still deductively say any F is G, because every F is G is a given premise.
That's fine, but if you have a purely general statement here, that means something different to that F is G. Because if that F is G, there has to be something that is F. This goes right back to what I kept saying last time. If Waverley was written by a machine, then there is no such thing as the author of Waverley. Yeah? Or if it was some kind of accident in a factory that produced Waverley. It has no author. Then there is no such thing as the author of Waverley. Yeah? If America has no king, then there is no such thing as the king of America. A statement involving there has to be such a thing.
Okay. So
There has to be something which is F.
So it seems to me like what you're saying is if you just have every F is also G, that doesn't presuppose the existence of F. But if you're saying there's exactly one thing which is F, and every F is also G, then that presupposes the existence of F.
At least one F. Yes. Okay. Right. Last one. Yeah.
So now that we proved that Gerald, didn't make sense, are we going to take singular terms for granted? Are we going to take our understanding of names for granted? Don't you mean to say that?
This is what we'll be spending the next 4 weeks on. You'll be pleased to hear. Yeah, absolutely. The important point is to see that we need a level of language use that is more basic than anything involving descriptions, right? And this is, in a way, what we're doing right now is clearing the ground. We're trying to identify what the most basic aspects of language are, so that we can get on to asking, and how does this hook on to the world? Yeah? And that's what the crypt key that we're coming on to on Monday is addressing. Right? It's exactly that. So what I want to do is, I want to go quite quickly over both of these things, actually. The implications that Russell draws from this about descriptions like the Golden Mountain. And then Russell has his own positive account, which is pretty wild. But the thing is, what we're cranking through here is quite dry, logical stuff. But the reason this is interesting is that so much hangs on what you say next, about what you think the fundamental ways are that language connects to reality. A lot about your picture of the world turns on what you say about what happens next. And with Russell at the end here, we'll get a first glimpse of that. So remember with Frege, you had the sign, and then there was a sense, or something like a description, fixing the reference, and the reference of the sign. Right? All happy with that, that's Frege's picture. And then there was this alternative picture that you just got the name and you got the object that it refers to. Now, on that model, remember when I was talking about dot and squiggle and smudge? When you're thinking of names like that, the only way you can, when you're thinking of a name as simple, in the way that Russell thinks of a name as simple, then the only way you can explain its meaning is by saying what it stands for. So if I'm trying to explain the meaning of a name like squiggle or dot or smudge, the only way you can explain its meaning is by showing the thing it stands for. If you don't do that, then you haven't given the name a sign. So in that model, a name can't have meaning when it doesn't refer. It makes no sense to suppose you've got a name that has meaning but no reference. Okay, and that was really the model of that thing about smudge. Okay? So a name is simple. You can't explain its meaning by giving a description. And there's no other way to explain its meaning except by showing the thing it stands for. And then Russell's point about terms like the Golden Mountain is that you understand perfectly well what they mean, but they don't refer. And then if you think that these are really just kind of names, you're going to say something stupid. You're going to say, for example, as who was it, Meinong said, the Golden Mountain must really have existence, even though you can't actually find it, it doesn't subsist, but it must be just shimmering just beyond anything perceptible, right? It must be really hanging out there somewhere. Could we find it? But of course it doesn't subsist, so you can't find it. And similarly for the Tartan sun, or I don't know, anyway, any mad description you like, has to as long as it has a meaning, there has to be something out there giving it meaning. The round square, the tallest unicorn, the king of France, the king of America. The king of America must be out there somewhere, because the phrase makes sense. How could it make sense if it didn't stand for something? Well, the answer is, these are descriptions. They have their meaning because of their connections to general terms. So you don't explain the meaning of the descriptions, like the Golden Mountain or the king of France, on this model. Yeah? If you did try to explain them in that model, that's where you're led into supposing that all these things exist. And as Russell says, if you're going to talk about all these objects somehow existing out there but not subsisting, you have lost you have a failure of that feeling for reality, which ought to be preserved even in the most abstract studies. I have to say that it seems to me that after class last time, I got into a long argument about fictional names and whether Hamlet exists. And once you wind up saying that Hamlet does exist after all, or as one person I won't say who shall remain nameless was saying Santa Claus does exist in a sense, then I think you have lost that feeling for reality. Right? It's very important to keep a hold on to those things. Santa, but Santa does not exist, even though the sign makes sense. Okay, so how it does, well, I mean, what's Russell's positive account here? Russell's trying to have this account with the sign and the object, and that's it. Russell is saying, let's go right back to Frege's starting point. You have to dig a little bit in the article to see exactly what he's doing this, but I think if you look, you can see that he is doing what I say he's doing. He's going right back to where Frege began. He's saying, let's consider this model where there's the sign and the reference to the sign. If you've got a simple name, that's all there is to the meaning of the thing, the sign and the object. And Frege had two objections to that. One was this thing about informative identities, and the other was this thing about the possibility of meaning without reference. So Russell has to have answers to both of those if he's going to explain how this can be correct for the most basic class of names in your language. And what Russell says about informativeness is this. He says, so long as names are used as names, if Scott and Sir Walter are really both simple names, then Scott is Sir Walter is the same trivial proposition as Scott is Scott. So what he's saying is, if you really have names there, if they're simple names, then you can never have an informative identity. What Frege was saying about informative identities was right for descriptions. If you get different descriptions on either side of an identity sign, then you can have something that's informative. So long as you get two simple names on either side of an identity sign, you never get anything that's informative. So if you find an informative identity, like the morning star is the evening star, let's take it that's an informative identity. That's got to be two descriptions. It just follows, since you've got an informative identity, these are really two descriptions. They're not really names. If you've really got names, the identity is always uninformative. So Frege's puzzle about informativeness doesn't arise for proper names. And he says most of these things that we call proper names usually, like Bill Clinton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Homer, these are not actually names, because it makes sense to ask, does Homer exist? And if Homer was really a name, it would make sense to ask, does it exist? Because from the mere fact that the name Homer means something, you can't significantly, it follows that the thing must exist. Yep.
So just go back to the other slide. It seems to me like, if you've heard from someone about A. Sir Walter, right? You've heard stories about
Yes.
Sir Walter, you don't know who that person is.
Yes, yes.
And then all of a sudden someone says, you don't know one, Scott is Sir Walter.
Right.
It seems like it's informative right there.
Very good, yes.
Associated the label and the object, all of those facts that you know about Sir Walter.
But the way you put it was really helpful, actually, in revealing. You said, you know a Sir Walter, right? So you're using Sir Walter there as a general term, right? You could say, well, there are four Sir Walters here.
But there are four Scots, so I can ask which
Okay,
Scott is
if you use Scott in that way, you're using it as a general term. Yeah? It's because you're using them as general terms that you can get the informative identities here. What he's saying is, so long as names are used as names, not as general terms, not as descriptions, then you're going to get something trivial.
But then he doesn't fully counter Frege, because Frege says no one can prevent me from using any object as a sign.
Right.
So then I can say, well, any sign is really a general term.
Very good. That's right. Okay. I want to put that on hold for just, well, less than 5 minutes. But can I just put that on hold just for a second? Because Russell does have an answer to that. But it's with this answer that you start to see the point of the whole thing. And we don't want to get to that too quickly, do we? What was it? I had a sense of someone else was something up there. No? Right. Okay. But that's exactly the position. Every time Frege finds phenomena that suggest that this picture is wrong, and you've got to have the other one, the sense picture, Russell is going to say, that just shows that these aren't really proper names you're talking about. Homer can't be a name, Bill Clinton can't be a name, because you can't ask significantly, do these things exist? No names, in the strict sense, occur. But what seem like names are really descriptions. Most of the things we take to be names are not names, they are really descriptions. The exceptions, the real names, are terms like this and that, and a few other words, the meaning of which varies on different occasions. So you can talk about this and that, but what you're actually referring to in any particular occasion will vary. So the meaning of this varies from occasion to occasion when you use it. And similarly for signs like yonder. So the thing is, the basic picture he has is that the class of names that the rest of language depends on are signs that refer only to your own current or recent sense data. So you have signs like this referring to your current sensation of redness, or that referring to your current frisson of joy, assuming this is what's going on. Then you have names referring to those things. Language has this structure where at a sophisticated level there are all these descriptions, these complex defined terms, clusters of descriptions. At the base level there are only simple names identifying your own current sense data, your own current sensations, just the immediate psychological states you're having, your own current perceptions. Now, that's where he rejects, this is to answer your question, that's where he rejects Frege saying anything can be used as a name for anything. Because all that you can name using a simple term are your own current sense data. If you want to talk about a physical object, if you want to talk about another person, you have to use a description. You have to say something like, I'm getting a lot of table sense data right now. Look, this is a table sense data, and that was a table sense data. I bet you there's a table out there causing those sense data. I mean, we do that just reflexively without thinking about it in adult life, but that's what's happening. Someone keeps asking a lot of questions. I get a lot of challenging sense data, right? I say, hey, I'm getting a lot of flack here. I'm getting a lot of grief here. There must be a questioner out there producing all these vexatious sense data, right? I'll call that thing the questioner. You see what I mean? So if I want to say anything about something in the world around me, I have to use a description. With names, I'm confined to my own current sense data. Descriptions are what allow me to get beyond talk about my own current sense data. And this is not just a fact about me, this is how it works for you too. All your own understanding of language depends on this base class of terms talking about your own current psychological states. So your basic capacity to think at all is grounded in your capacity to think about your own current psychological states. Just one second, I just want to... the thing is, suppose you consider Frege's two arguments about informativeness and meaning without reference now. Suppose we're at the most basic level of language use, where you only have terms like this and that referring to your own current perceptions, your own current experiences, your own current sense data. Can you have true informative identities there? Well, Russell's point is, you can't. The problem doesn't really arise for sense data. Because suppose, for example, I've got a pain in my foot and a sensation of red from vision. And I say, okay, consider this sensation of red, that pain in the foot. Are they identical? Well, they're obviously not identical. I mean, if they seem non-identical, they're not identical. That's how your own sensations work. It's your own mind. You know all about which of your own sensations are the same and which are different. Whereas, if I say, this pain is this pain, that's true. but it's trivial. It's just perfectly obvious to me that this pen is this pen. Within the confines of my own mind, I can't have informative identities. It can't be that someone says, well, science has shown that actually the pain in your foot is the same thing as that funny tingling feeling in your ear. Science can't do that. We're just talking about my sensations. I get to judge about my sensations, whether they're the same. I'm authoritative about that. So for logically proper names, for real proper names, for proper names that refer only to your own current or recent sense data, these questions about informativeness don't arise. And consider Frege's argument about meaning without reference. Could you say, well, I understand this sign this perfectly well, but I don't know what it stands for? Well, if this is a sign referring to your own current sensation, how could it be that there's no such thing? That makes no sense. If you think you're having a sensation of red, then you are having a sensation of red. With Homer, you might think there's such a thing, but it might turn out there's no such thing. With Buzz Aldrin, you might think there's such a thing, but it might turn out it was all a hoax. With Bill Clinton, it might turn out, well, it really wasn't such a person, it was all put together. With your own sensations, you cannot be mistaken. So for simple names referring to your own current sensations, Russell says, you don't need this Frege stuff about reference. That's how you can have a view that only has the sign and the object and no sense. So you don't need the notion of sense. You have the descriptions, which are explained as how many terms, and you have the true simple names that are explained in this way. Notice, though, that there is a real price here. I want to take this one question, because you haven't asked a question before. The future sense data. I don't remember Russell explicitly excluding that, but I'm pretty sure he thinks not. Yeah, because a future sense datum, like if I'm sitting in the cafe thinking, boy, will that coffee taste good if it ever comes? Yeah, and I'm anticipating the coffee. Yeah, the taste of the coffee. His picture is, I've got to be acquainted with the sensation. I've got to have some knowledge of the sensation in order to refer to it. And there what you've got is, you've got a description. You've got something like, the taste that coffee is going to produce in me if it ever comes. When you only have a prediction of the future sensation, that's always descriptive. Do you see what I mean? I think that's the picture. It would be a kind of seeing into the future, a kind of premonition or something like that. Second sight is you could get the sensation from now, what sensation you're going to be having in 5 minutes. So his picture is that what's fixing the reference of a name is acquaintance, what he calls acquaintance, which is consider your own, I mean, I guess you look at the screen, you've got a sensation of greyness. Consider your own current relation to that sensation of greyness. What is the relation you stand? It's a very intimate relation, right? You know, you're having a headache. There are two different things there. There's you and there's the headache. But you are very intimately related, you and that headache. That's the poignancy of the whole situation, right? The intimacy of the relation between you and it. Russell's name for that intimate relation is acquaintance. You might think it's closer and deeper than mere acquaintance, but anyway, he calls it acquaintance, right? And he says that relation of acquaintance is what makes it possible for you to talk about, to think about those things. But notice that there is a terrible price being paid. Your picture of reality is completely defined in terms of its relations to your own sense data. My picture of reality is completely defined in terms of its relations to my sense data.